Hi there. This is going to be an overview on how I use iNaturalist for documenting, my observations as well as looking at what other people are seeing out there, whether it is with fungi, mushrooms, and or animals or insects, plants, trees, birds, fish, any form of life. iNaturalist is pretty good at just being a good place as a repository for what you're finding and maybe getting some help from the computers to identify things as well as the community itself. Um, I wanted to just drop a couple points in here at the start to as a request for you all as you're using and benefiting from iNaturalist that you can also be contributing to the community and to the observations that are out there. There's loads and loads of really good information for anybody who's interested in trying to find bald eagles or golden eagles or salmon runs, and at the same time, it's I think it can be easy for people to benefit from the information that's out there, but then be hesitant to let anybody else know, where you have gone picking for mushrooms. There are ways that you can document and your observations and still share it with the community without sharing the specific location. For me personally, I am not concerned at all about sharing specific locations other than maybe just like I will obscure observations around my home or in friends' private property, or if I have some specific mushrooms that I am a little bit concerned about, just anybody knowing that spot. But I have logged lots of my chanterelle finds and lots of other mushrooms out there, all the way down to the square meter where I found it. I'm not so concerned about it because I'm trying to get off trails and out off of the beaten path generally. And so if you are finding yourself doing the same, if you're maybe outside of city parks and maybe on just some on trails or off of a trail where it's pretty unlikely that other people are going to be going regularly, I really think it would be great if you could include your observations and feel free to post them publicly. This information can be really helpful just for us amateurs out there who are interested in learning more about the um, what's fruiting and when, and trying to understand these and other organisms better. This sort of information and sharing with each other is it can really help increase the rate at which we're able to understand more about these things. And so yes, it's really just an ask for, if you're finding iNaturalist to be beneficial for you personally, it would be really, really nice if you would also contribute your own observations to the community. So that's all for that. Let's get started.
All right, so let's just start by looking for mushrooms in Washington. Okay, you can see that there's just a lot of information here, and that's fine. We just have to learn to do some filtering in order to find information that's most useful to you. So what I'm going to do is just kind of talk you through some of the basic tools here in iNaturalist for just searching for looking at things. If you want to look at your own observations, all the things that you have uploaded on a map, you can click here on your observations, and then just zoom in, say to Washington, and learn a little bit more about what you've seen and where. There are a couple of different views. We're on map view. You can look at grid view to just see the actual photos of these things. This is to look at your own stuff. If you were interested in looking for at a particular user, you could just type in like me, for instance. I'm not sure if this is actually going to work. That's not probably what I wanted to do. Let me see if I can do it up here. Okay, so you could go look at all of my observations down to the square meter that where I had posted it. Some of these I do obscure to make them, not showing the exact location, but for the most part, I'm sharing everything exactly where I found it. And then again, you could click on grid view to just go look at the individual mushrooms or list that I've documented or observed. That's for looking at a particular person, but I don't think that's super useful. More useful is maybe looking for mushrooms in Washington, like we had done a moment ago. So mushrooms, there are a couple of different options. Fungi, including lichens, it just gets us the whole fungal kingdom. That's fine. I typically choose Basidiomycete fungi. It does filter out a few or some key mushroom species and families. It actually removes an entire phylum. But the vast majority of the mushrooms that we find are in the phylum Basidiomycota, and that doesn't include lichens. And so this is just it's a nice filtered list that I typically use. But just note there are some limitations to that. So Basidiomycete fungi, and let's look at Washington. So oops, I'm going to remove myself, and we're looking at everybody now. Okay, here's the map, what it looks like. Now maybe I want to filter this down for just the months August and September, just so that I have a better sense on what mushrooms might be fruiting in August and September. So we've done this. We're down to 7,400 observations. Let's go to grid view and let's just see what people find in August and September's. So yeah, just scrolling through this list to show you some things. You may recognize some of these already, especially these conchs here, which you'd find year round. Other polypores. There's a russula, chicken of the woods. So this is one way that you can go through and just start noticing. You can filter this big list of all sorts of life all over the world down to just a region that you care about, and maybe just a specific life form, whether it's the fungi or birds or fish or something else. You can go even deeper or more specific by, I'm going to go back to map view, and I might be interested in knowing what mushrooms are growing in or have been observed growing in the Olympics here during those months, August and September. I'm going to move this over here just so that I can kind of clip off the Seattle area, redo search in map. So now if I move this over here and I zoom out, you'll see the bounding box that was created by that. You can do a couple of things. Either if you know the county and you just want to search a very specific region with those sorts of borders, county, state, country, you can do that. I oftentimes will just change the size of my window here so that I can get it to have a box around the area that I'm concerned with, and then I hit redo search and map. We've already got most of the Olympics here, and I still have some spots on like Bainbridge Island, but this is fine for now. So just a reminder of what filters we have. We're looking at Basidiomycete fungi in this boxed area in the months of August and September. So this is where people have observed them. Now, there are loads of mushrooms that are popping up all over these places, these blank spaces. This is just showing you where people have logged observations. Go to grid view, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit because what I would do and have done is zoomed out so that I can get a lot of photos on one screen. And I've just taken screenshots of these things and saved it to my phone. That way, when I am offline and on a hike in the Olympics, I can easily look back on other observations that are out there, so that if I just have a chance to look at mushrooms that are have been most often found in that area. and it can be a little bit more useful than even a guidebook in this sense, because now you're just looking at mushrooms that were found in a particular area at a particular time. That's going to be much more specific or useful, I think, than a guidebook that might have hundreds of mushrooms from many different regions over a 12-month year. So this is something that you might do for looking at an area before you go out, or if you're going to be out for a day or two, maybe just save these to your phone, just some screenshots. But this is an interesting way I have found to use the filters in order to be more useful for me. The last thing, or one of another thing, and definitely not the last, something else that you can do, let me just redo these search filters or reset them quickly, is if you are interested in learning more about a particular mushroom that you haven't found before and you'd like to learn to identify better, like, say, the Prince or Agaricus augustus, we can do a search for this. I'll type in Washington just so that we're getting observations that are closer to where I am. And again, you can just scroll through this list and look at a bunch of different photos of mushrooms that people have identified as being the Prince. It's not a certainty that that all of these. It's actually probably a certainty that all of them are not the Prince, but many of them are, or the majority of them are, and this can be really helpful in just getting a better sense for some of these mushrooms, just what they look like and how they, all the different forms that they may take. And then if I wanted to, I could look at a map and just see where are the princes found. Here it is. And it looks like that the Prince is much more common in urban areas than it is in the forest. So that's kind of helpful to know. And you can do this with any mushroom. If you want to learn a little bit more about the different morels that are out there, you could probably type that in. So yeah, hopefully that you found some of this useful. Let's move on to some other things. So I'm going to show you how to use the upload tool here in iNaturalist. So I've uploaded a bunch of photos that I exported from my Photos app. When I did that, I did include the location data whenever it was there. So if you have an option for including or not including location data, do include it. That way everything can be geotagged. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Now, if you're doing this from your phone, it will be mostly automatic, but it's easier for me to export a lot of photos at once from my computer and then upload them here using the web tool rather than the app. That's just my personal preference because of the number of photos that I'm uploading. But if you're just uploading 1 and 2 photos at a time, doing it from your phone is probably just fine. So I've uploaded a bunch of photos, but you can see a lot of these are duplicates, or they are from the same mushroom, just multiple photos. So I drag them together in order to group them. These two are the same. I'm just going to do this real quickly here, and this is helpful that way you're only creating one observation for each mushroom here. Some of these are not really that identifiable, or there aren't a lot of identifiable characteristics or big characteristics to make them jump out. So some of these down here, we probably won't be able to identify too easily, or the computer won't be able to notice them. But up top here, you can see I have location data for these. That can just help the computer to figure out, maybe what mushroom this is. And you can just start by clicking into, I'm going to type in Seattle here. I'm not sure exactly where this guy was at. You don't have to worry about how to do this so much, but I'm just trying to give this a geographic area. Okay, we'll start by just clicking on species name. I recognize this as an Amanita, but if you're not familiar with it, or even if you are, it's still fine just to use these suggestions here. And And so, what I would do is, if you're really confident about the identity of this mushroom, then feel free to select a species. Like the Amanita gemata here is what this probably is. But if you're not really confident in that species, maybe you recognize this as belonging to the Amanita family or genus, but you're not super confident with the species. You could just select Amanita mushrooms. Or if you don't know at all what this is, but you are sure it has gills, maybe you can just type in, whoops, gilled mushrooms. And I do this with a lot of my observations, where I just would prefer to have a mushroom in a too general of a category rather than too specific. That way, it doesn't, it's just, I think it's a little bit more useful or helpful to not over define what mushroom you think this is. So I log a lot of my mushrooms as just gilled mushroom, leave it there, and as I am more familiar with it, or once I recognize that mushroom or take the time to go back and figure out exactly what that was, then I will update this for maybe the genus level or species level. Same thing here with this mushroom. I'm just going to click on species name and see what it comes up with. I recognize this as being this Coprinopsis lagopus. But if you are familiar with Coprinopsis, the genus, and you're not confident that it's the species, you could just select this genus level up here. Same as we just moved through some of these other ones. This is definitely a cauliflower mushroom, and sure enough, the computer recognizes it as a spiraceous or a cauliflower mushroom. There are multiple spiraceous or cauliflower mushrooms around the U.S., but for me, it doesn't really matter that much to the species level, and I don't know this genus well enough to be able to recognize a Western cauliflower versus Spiraceus crispa. I think that ours are probably mostly Spiraceus radicata, but I just don't know, so I'll just leave it as Spiraceus, a cauliflower mushroom. That's useful. And you can do this just kind of going through. This is a polypore. It appears to me to be a Blackfoot polypore, but if I'm not confident in it or haven't taken time to just go through the book to make sure that I do know what this is, you could just select bracket fungi, and these two are actually the same, and I think this might be the same as well. So that's how you can work through this. You don't have to be specific. If you really don't know, you can just type in fungi and get it somewhat categorized. That way, as the community goes through and sees some of your photos, people might recognize some of them and be able to add their own identifications. And just over time, that's how these identifications get built out. The last thing I want to mention is, for me, I keep, for the most part, the location of my mushroom finds all public, unless it's particularly interesting mushroom, like say this cauliflower mushroom. I maybe want to just hold on to that spot for myself. And what I would do is just select here and change geoprivacy to obscured, so it makes it more general, and so one doesn't know exactly where you were, or private, nobody can see it. So you can do that for any of your observations. But I think it's really just helpful for the community and scientific and otherwise to keep locations public, so that the computers can be learning more, so that we can benefit from the community's posting, and then you can benefit from what everybody else is posting. I think it's just kind of helpful to share when you can. So that's my own personal preference. You can keep your locations private or obscured as you see fit. This has been a little bit longer than I would have normally described, but I figured since I'm just recording this, you can hopefully have gotten some information out of it and can revisit this in the future. Please do let me know if you have any questions. Those questions are really useful for me because then I can maybe record some more videos or include some clarification here. But yeah, I'd love to help. So please do let me know how I can. Thank